Welcome to the next episode of the Anti-contractor Home Podcast. I believe this is episode 4.
Yep, episode 4.
My, what a journey it's been. So last week we talked about electricity coming from your electricity provider into your house. Mm-hmm. And so today we're going to look at a popular method, or a method that's becoming much more popular nowadays, of using solar panels to either produce some of your electricity, all of your electricity, allow you to be off the grid, or grid tied, and you can sell your electricity back to the electric company.
Yes.
Green technologies in general in architecture school are not taught correctly.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, just green.
It's it's a very superficial thing. You have a green roof, you're good to go.
Sustainable technologies and the way they're implemented are very tacked on. Mm-hmm. It's, do you check this box? Do you check this box? And I would accredit that to the lead system. Unfortunately, did you put bike racks in the front of your building? Then yes, you get a lead point. Woohoo! Did you put solar panels on? Things like that.
Yeah.
And so everybody knows solar panels. They're becoming much more popular over time
and cheaper.
Yes, they're
hence why they're getting popular.
Clean way of producing, or a way of producing clean energy.
Yeah. 2011, when I was in the 5th year of architecture, I was designing this, for my independent study, I was designing this off-the-grid house in Dubai. And I drove to Abu Dhabi by myself. And I went to this solar panel convention over there. And they had all the latest technology, solar panel technology. They had this thin film solar, the one that went bankrupt in the States. Remember that? In 2010, I think. Anyway. But they had this thin film solar, and I also visited a house out in the middle of the mountains in the desert that was apparently trying to be off the grid. So they had their own solar panels and all that stuff. So that was my first introduction to off-grid.
Yeah, that's step 1 to off the grid. Get solar panels.
Yeah, because, you can use, that's not the only form of renewable energy.
But that's the most economical.
Yeah, they're trying to find a way to make geothermal energy somehow tied in with solar power, because storing energy in batteries is not the best method, because it degrades over time. You lose electricity. So they're trying to find a way to use it to heat up water and store the water underground.
Yes.
And use natural geothermal energy to keep that water warm, and then extract the heat from the water to bring back energy over time.
Or even I've seen where people that produce excess solar, the energy generated, it goes back into their to powering their house, and then excess that they may have goes into producing hot water for their water heater.
Yeah. So
you're trying to, because you don't want to waste any of the solar that you're generating. Where do we begin?
So what is a solar panel? We have to understand how that actually works. How you're getting energy from the sun.
I saw that you did some research on that, and it's very chemistry oriented, and it kind of goes over my head.
Yeah, I'll explain it to you.
The basics of chemistry I grasp, but I have a few questions for you. So will you discuss?
Absolutely.
The solar panel process.
So we know solar panels are made of silicon. So silicon's extracted from sand.
Okay, my first question.
Yes. Silicone, not silicone, silicon.
Silicon, yes.
Difference without the E.
Yes. My question is silicon the only material you can use?
Right now, yes. And the reason for that is the chemistry behind it, the atomic number of silicon. Okay. So silicon has 4 valence, I think that's how you pronounce it. We used to call it valence, but 4 valence electrons.
In America, it's valence.
Yeah. 4 valence electrons. Similar to carbon. So carbon you see it everywhere, all these hydrocarbons, that also has 4 valence electrons. So that gives it the ability to make covalent bonds. It bonds with other atoms rather than donating or accepting electrons. So that's why it has so many compounds and products made out of carbon. It's such a versatile material. So silicon is similar in that way because it has 4 valence electrons. You know what valence electrons are?
Don't put me on the spot.
Okay. So valence electrons is the number of free electrons in the outermost shell of the atom. So say silicon, for example. Silicon has an atomic number of 14. So you have your nucleus in the middle, and then you have rings. This is the Niels Bohr
This
structure.
method has since been disproven.
Okay, so it has 14 electrons. Okay, let's talk about that. So the first ring has 2 electrons. The second ring has 8 electrons. The third ring has 4 electrons. So the number of electrons in the outermost ring are called valence electrons. So it has those 4 electrons that it's willing to give away to other elements, to other atoms. Okay? But it's also willing to, like with carbon, it's such a stable element, it doesn't want to donate or accept. So it keeps those electrons in those outermost shell, and it just shares the electrons with other elements. That's the advantage of having 4 electrons in your outermost shell. It's more versatile. So silicon, that having those 4 electrons makes it a semiconductor. When temperature rises, resistance drops, which is the opposite of a metal.
Right. Like copper.
Yes. So that's the big advantage of using silicon for solar panels, because obviously you're relying on the generation of heat. Like you're relying on heat to excite the electrons.
So imagine if you had your house wired with silicon wires.
Okay.
Instead of using copper wires,
using
silicon wires.
That wouldn't work.
Why not?
Well, silicon, you can't extrude it into wires, first of all. It's not a metal. You have it in wafers forms, but...
Right, but the way when silicon's produced, it comes out in this huge, big cylindrical piece.
Yes. Well, okay, let's not talk about the shape then. I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong about the shape. I haven't seen silicon wires, though. But it's...
The silicon comes out in this massive cylindrical shape as it's being produced, and at the very tip it goes to a very fine point. It's being held by this very fine point, and it's really beautiful because of how strong the material is, I guess. So I guess purified silicon ingot, that's what the wafers are sliced from.
You cannot use a semiconductor to conduct electricity because of the number of valence electrons. Like copper has 1 valence electron. It can readily lose it. So the fact that it can lose that electron allows electricity to move through a copper pipe. But with silicon, it has 4 valence electrons. It can excite them, but it's not as easily, it doesn't easily move the electrons.
So you're saying there's more resistance?
No, it doesn't want to lose its 4 electrons as easily as copper wants to lose its 1 electron.
Okay.
So when they're making silicon wafers, they don't use just silicon. They use phosphorus and boron. If you think of silicon wafer, the top part of it is injected with phosphorus, which has 5 valence electrons, extra electrons that it wants to give away. The bottom part of phosphorus, they dope it, which like they inject it with boron. So boron it needs 5 electrons in its outermost shell to complete the shell and make it like stable. What happens is when light hits this solar panel, it excites the electrons. It excites the electrons of the phosphorus electrons.
Yeah.
Okay. So silicon's just acting as a base. It's a good base.
It's sort of a mediator between the boron and the phosphorus, right?
It's not.
It's allowing the electrons
to flow.
through.
Correct. Yes, it's allowing electrons to flow, and it's not inhibiting the flow of electrons when heat rises. So sunlight contains energy in the form of like photons. When light hits the solar panel, it excites the electrons, the phosphorus electrons, and then the phosphorus electrons move towards the boron side.
Yes.
The boron doped
pass
silicon.
through the silicon.
Yes.
To the boron.
So that creates a junction right there in the middle of those two, and that's called a PN junction.
Yes.
So the P for positive, that means the top part where the phosphorus, where it's losing electrons, that creates a positive junction because there's loss of electrons. Mm-hmm. The lower side where boron is, that gains electrons, so that's the N junction, the negative junction. So that's just one tiny wafer, a single wafer.
Yes.
So when that electron, so what they do is they have bus bars connecting all these hundreds of thousands of silicon wafers, depending on how big your solar panel is. So these bus bars that's made of metal.
Right. It allows the electricity to flow through.
Allows electricity, all these free electrons to flow through it.
Is it made of copper?
I'm not sure. From what I've seen, it's like a silverish metal.
Yeah,
it's like
it looks like a stainless
aluminum
or
or stainless steel or something. I'm not sure. Maybe it's aluminum. So it's renewable in the way that those electrons flow to your battery or whatever, and then just come back. It's not. It's a cycle of losing the electrons, coming back to the p-n junction, gaining those electrons. It's just a continuous cycle. Yeah. So that's how it generates electricity. But the important thing is that this is a one-directional flow of current.
Direct current, yes.
It's not alternating current.
Like electricity produced at the power plant, coal-powered electricity, is alternating current.
Yes. You watch all these videos on YouTube where they talk about, oh, my solar panels are not producing enough electricity, and then they have their solar panels like thousands of yards away from where their generator and their inverter and all that stuff is, which doesn't make any sense because of the nature of DC current versus AC current. So DC current is going to naturally decrease over time because it's just a constant flow, and resistance and like heat dissipation, all that stuff is going to cause a drop. The way AC current works, it has peaks and like troughs.
Works like a sine wave.
Works like a sine wave. So that allows a constant flow of electricity. So when you look at your light, it's not actually constant.
Right.
It's dimming and then getting brighter and then dimming and getting brighter, but that keeps it constant.
But the frequency,
the average of it,
the frequency of that sine wave is
so
fast.
short,
Yeah.
so short that you don't notice.
You can't notice. Yeah. If you were to film, is it an incandescent bulb at 60 frames per second on your camera or something, you could see that flickering. Or your old CRT monitor, you can see the flickering.
Mm-hmm. Because those frequencies are longer.
Yes. Yeah.
Or if you see so many frames per second and you can slow it down, then you definitely see the light dimming and getting bright.
So it all goes back to a sine wave.
Yeah.
Good old
trig.
trig.
The nature of that obviously means that you need what's called an inverter.
Why do you need your inverter close to your solar panel?
To convert that DC to AC and keep that
the voltage
pretty high.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're just going to lose.
Right. But the inverter also converts your voltage to the 240 volts that you need in your house.
So it depends on how much electricity is coming from your solar panels. It can be like 48 volts of DC current, and your inverter collects that and converts that 48 volts of DC current to 120, 240 volts of AC current.
Right. Which is
what we talked about last week.
Which would require a much more expensive inverter because you have to convert the 48 volts up to 240.
Yeah.
Whereas most people's solar arrays are wired in series to where you can add up, let's say you have like 36 volt panels, it goes up to 360 volts. So then your inverter is taking that 360 volts and dropping it down to 240. But this is all assuming you're going straight from your solar panels to the inverter to your panel, which would be a meter tied system, like a grid tied system. Because otherwise, if you go into a battery, batteries are at 48 volts, typically 36.
But you still want
volts.
those batteries close to your solar panels. You don't want it because the wire running from your solar panels to your batteries, you're going to lose a lot of electricity in that run.
But if your solar array, the higher the volts are on your solar array, the smaller your wire needs to be because the more current it can carry. And thus you can go further, and hence the power lines we have out here, they're running
high voltage.
Yeah, higher voltage, and the wire's small. If it was running at 240 volts, the wire would need to be massive and thus very expensive. So the more volts you have in your solar array,
like the pressure.
The voltage, yes.
Yeah. So it's like forcing things faster.
Yes, so you can run a smaller wire.
So have you seen like blue versus black solar panels? Different colors?
I always thought that was just the way the light's hitting it.
Yeah.
Really. I never...
I didn't know either.
I mean, I don't look at them that closely. I've never been up close with solar panels enough to distinguish the difference. But there is a difference between the blue and the black solar panels. What is that difference?
So the black is much more efficient than the blue. It's more refined.
Is that because black absorbs heat?
No, it's just a different step in the silicon extraction process from silica. It's more pure. It's a more pure form. It's a monocrystalline form of silicon versus the blue, which is a polycrystalline form of silicon.
A more pure form of silicon, meaning they inject it with less boron and phosphate?
No, we're not talking about the doping. We're talking about pre-doping.
Okay.
Pre-doping. Yeah. Just the silicon wafer by itself. The phosphorus and boron they don't add any color to your silicon wafer.
Okay.
But when they're creating the silicon, I don't know exactly how they convert polycrystalline to monocrystalline, but if they take that extra step, they get from like a blue silicon wafer to a black silicon wafer. But it's much more expensive.
So you have to take an extra step to go from poly to mono?
Yes.
Okay. It seems like mono would be its original form, and then they're adding some other material to degrade, not to make it less efficient, but more cost effective for the solar panel producer. No.
So when you're extracting it from silica, from sand, you go through different refining processes.
So this graphic says that fragments of silicone are melted together to form the wafers. That's the polycrystalline method versus the monocrystalline is where silicon is formed into bars and cut into wafers.
So it's kind of like MDF versus plywood.
Is that
kind of like, so like with MDF, they just take bits of everything, melt it together, glue with and pressure and make a MDF board.
Right.
But plywood is actual, I'm not talking about the inner parts, but like it's
Plies,
actual real wood.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very thin plies of wood.
But monocrystalline is so much more expensive, they don't use it much.
Right.
It's more efficient, it lasts longer. The difference in output versus polycrystalline, it's not worth it. If they can somehow bring the price down and increase efficiency to double. So the efficiency of polycrystalline is around 13 to 17%. The efficiency of monocrystalline is around 15 to 22.
What does that mean?
Solar panel efficiency is the measurement of how much sun's energy a certain panel can convert into electricity.
Okay.
So they convert in joules or whatever, the incoming solar energy, how much of it's converted into real electricity.
Okay.
That's the efficiency.
Okay. Which seems extremely inefficient.
It does.
But there's no better way of capturing the energy from the sun.
Right now, yeah.
There's no more efficient way.
So if we were to have an off-grid anti-contractor home, off-grid, running entirely on solar panels, what does that mean and what are the advantages of that?
So that means that your solar array is completely independent of what the electric company is providing, the electric company is providing. They're completely disconnected. But since its solar energy is produced as a DC current, you have to have somewhere to store that energy and then convert it to alternating current because that's what your house accepts, is alternating current.
Yeah.
Off-grid solar is a very basic set of components. You have your solar panels. That goes, the electricity goes to your charge controller, which drops the voltage to your battery voltage, which if you have a 360 volt array or a 240 volt array, it's going to drop that voltage to whatever your battery will accept, which is typically 36 to 48 volts. Mm-hmm. And it also monitors that battery and tells when it's full or when it needs to send more current that way. Mm-hmm. And so from your charge controller, your electricity goes into your batteries, it's stored there, and then you have your inverter, which is pulling from your batteries, your battery bank, and that is what is that 48 volts or 36 volts is
of DCs.
Yes, DC is being converted to 120/240 of alternating current, and then that is what's powering your house. The advantages of that type of system are that you're not tied to the grid. Like you're completely independent. Now it would be very expensive, and you'd have to have a very large array, just depending on what your power load is, your load for your house.
Yeah.
You would have to size it appropriately to be able to power everything in your house, including your refrigerator, your air conditioner, your stove, things like that.
So we live in Texas, where fortunately we don't have heavy snow loads or anything that could cover your solar panel. We could possibly get a steady amount of electricity produced throughout the year.
Yes.
In Texas.
More so than in the northern states. And
Northeast,
the winter months is the big issue because the sunlight is much less. But here we are in December, and it's bright and sunny outside, 70 degrees, but that's just Texas for you.
Yeah. So if you do have extreme weather to think about in winter, do you need to have a generator?
If you're strictly
Off-grid.
Yeah, if you're solely off-grid, yes, you're
What
going to
else do you
need some extra electricity from somewhere. And that's what most people that are 100% off-grid, they'll have their solar array, and then they'll have their generator for the winter months, their gas-powered generator, which is contradictory to the whole sustainability thing.
Yeah.
But I guess you're using, your carbon footprint is still shrinking because you're using less than you would be if you were tied into the grid.
So
using-
gas power generate, how's that fueled? They just have to bring like propane tanks and
Yes,
fuel
yeah.
it?
No, gasoline.
They have to bring
Yeah,
gasoline.
go to the gas station, get a bucket, fill it up with gasoline, pour it into your generator.
Have you seen the video of the lady in Houston who was filling up gasoline at the gas station in plastic bags and putting it in the back in her trunk? Yep.
That probably didn't work very well.
And the bag was leaking, so she just double bagged it.
Wait, okay.
A
I'm
bag
thinking
of gasoline.
I'm thinking Kroger bags.
Yes. Like
Not even a Ziploc bag?
not even a Ziploc bag. It wasn't Kroger, but it was like white plastic bag and was leaking, so she just double bagged it, and there was gasoline all over the ground. Crazy. I am not kidding. And she put it in the back in her trunk and just drove away.
This is also Texas. All right, I'm not going to really talk about that because that just blew my mind.
Yeah.
So on the completely off-grid solar system, the disadvantages would be that you have to buy your solar panels up front and set up your array, and you have to buy the charge controller, which is pretty expensive, the inverter, which is pretty expensive. So those costs add up, definitely, and it's very high initial cost. Most people, $20,000 to $30,000 is a fairly normal startup cost for that.
Yeah. And you're not going to see a payoff for a very long time.
Right. Maybe 8 to 9 years down the road, depending on how much electricity you use.
But saying that is also, it's relative, because there's this one couple on YouTube, what's that, Wonderfully Off-Grid or something like that. So they built a house completely way out in the middle of nowhere.
Idaho.
Oh, is it?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So the cost of running a power line from the main grid to their house was about the same, if not more, than just setting up a solar panel grid
solar system
right outside their home. So in that case, they saw an immediate payoff.
Right. Yeah. It was a wash.
Yeah.
Basically. And then they're just, it's free electricity from then on. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say if you, the typical person, if you were just to add up your energy savings over the course of just, you take your electric bill and then let's say it's like $200 a month and you cut that down to zero, assuming you're 100% using solar, that $200 over the course of time, how long does it take for that to add up to the total cost of your solar system?
Yeah.
And it's 8, 10, 12, 15 years, but it does eventually pay itself off. And surprisingly, technology for the solar panels has improved so much that they do not degrade near as much as they used to, which I find to be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
They lose approximately 0.5% of their energy production every year.
Okay.
Which goes out to about 11% or so over 25 years, or the life of the solar panel.
Are they recyclable?
I don't know. Is silicon recyclable?
I don't know. It's doped though, so how do you extract silicon,
Pure silicon from
that? Do they just dispose of them once they're done? They just
I don't know. Solar panels are so new that it's kind of like hybrid batteries in cars, like or electric cars in general. Are they recyclable? What do they do?
What do they do
with it?
Because that's interesting you say that, because Nissan, they sell second-hand car batteries that you can use to store your solar energy that you produce.
Okay, so
you can, you know how you can buy like a Tesla, you can do that with Tesla too. You can buy a Tesla Model S or Model Y car battery, put that in your house and connect that to your
charge
Your
controller
inverter.
and your
Yeah.
inverter. Yes. And you could also go to the store, go to Walmart and buy car batteries and use those as your
Really?
battery. Yeah.
Like a regular car battery?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the advantage of using those car?
Those are lithium ion batteries, aren't they? Mm-hmm. The Tesla batteries.
So the ones that, so you're saying you can buy lead acid or lead carbon battery, which we have in our car. You can buy that instead of using a lithium ion battery from
Yes.
Tesla or
Yeah,
Nissan.
you just have to hook up a lot of those batteries. The one major disadvantage is more in the technical details, is that your inverter has to be sized for your total home load whenever you're running an off-grid solar system.
For the max load.
Yes, if you run a grid-tied solar system, your inverter only has to be able to handle the voltage from your solar array. So getting an inverter that can handle the power of your whole house is very expensive. The 100% opposite of the off-grid solar system is the grid-tied solar system.
Which is what my sister has in Houston.
Yes, and that seems to be the most common type, other than the PPA agreement, the leasing
Which is also
solar
a
panels.
grid-tied system.
Yes, yeah.
It's the same thing.
But buying your panels outright and then doing a grid-tied system is what your sister does.
Yes.
Outline of that is you have your solar panels, that energy goes to your inverter, and that is converted to your 12240 volts, and that goes to your house, and whatever you don't use goes through your meter, spins your meter backwards, and gives you a credit.
Yeah. And
goes
then
back
at
to the
night,
electric company.
if you need it, then you are pulling electricity from the grid.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you watched Ferris Bueller's Day Out?
I don't know if I've seen it all the way
Right
through.
at the very end, they run the car in reverse. Have you seen that?
Oh, to spin the odometer backwards? Yeah. That doesn't work anymore. And so that when your panels aren't producing enough electricity for your house, since you're tied to the grid, the electricity from the grid will come
Supplements
yes,
that.
will help and provide all the electricity. So, for example, in the winter months when your solar panels aren't doing much, you'll be getting your electricity from the grid.
So when there's a power outage,
Yes, when there's a power outage,
you have to rely completely on your solar panels.
No, you don't. When you're tied to the grid and there's a power outage, you have no power. Your solar panels aren't doing anything.
Why is that?
So when the power goes out, electricians go out to fix the lines. They don't want your power from your solar panels going back through the lines and potentially electrocuting them.
Okay.
So it has to
when they
completely
set up the system in
shut off.
such a way that the power line kind of takes priority over your home usage.
Yes, for safety reasons.
Yeah.
You don't want to electrocute the guys working on the power lines.
Yeah.
And they don't want people's all their solar panels feeding back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Okay.
why you're 100% cut off if the power goes out.
Okay.
Which is a disadvantage, and it's kind of, you have solar panels, but then when the power goes out, you don't have electricity.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that a lot of people say, wait, that
doesn't
makes
make
no sense.
Yeah.
Screw solar panels. So the advantages of having this grid-tied solar system is it's fairly inexpensive because you don't have to have that charge controller. You don't have to have that oversized inverter. You don't have to have that battery bank. It's a very simple, clean layout.
Few components.
Yes.
And they have a lot of solar panel kits out there. So you can buy on Amazon or anything. It's just panels, an inverter, and
then tied
a
back
meter
to the
or
grid.
something. Yeah.
Yes. And also the solar you generate, the power you generate that you're not using goes back to the grid and provides you a credit.
Yep.
And so that could help pay off the initial cost of those solar panels.
We talked about last week that your electricity, the cost of your electricity varies throughout the day, varies every hour, every minute.
Mm-hmm.
So electricity is usually pretty cheap in the afternoons when nobody is really using it. Everyone's at work. Electricity is usually more expensive in the evenings when people come back home.
The demand is higher.
The demand is higher, and obviously it's more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So your solar panels are producing more electricity during the day when it's selling it back to the grid when it's cheap.
Right.
And at night, you're pulling electricity from the grid, pulling more expensive electricity from the grid.
When your solar panels are not producing.
When your solar panels are not producing.
Yes.
Who's winning in this case?
Right.
Obviously, the energy companies. they're getting a lot of cheap electricity during the afternoons.
Why can't the script be flipped?
And they're providing you expensive electricity at night.
So what's another solar system, another method of using solar panels that you can use to where you're not strictly grid tied, and you can actually do something with that energy you produce and use it when your demand is higher, is having a hybrid system where you're tied to the grid, but you also have a battery backup.
So in this case, if you did have a hybrid system, if there was an outage, you would be able to still power your home.
Most people with this system do have a dual panel set up. They have two different panels. They'll have like a critical load panel and then a everything else panel. So you'll have things like your refrigerator, your AC unit, the most important things in your house. That will be what your batteries are tied to and what your inverter is tied to. And then like your lights and receptacles, things like that, will be on a separate panel. And that's 100% pulling from the grid.
Okay.
So this is an expensive option, more expensive than strictly grid tied, because you have to have that charge controller, you have to have that battery bank, and then your inverter, depending on how you wire it, whether you have your critical load panel or if you're trying to do everything on one panel, your inverter will have to be sized accordingly for that, which can add up quickly. Okay, so the last type of solar system is what is called an AC coupled system. I'm not going to say that's the last type because there's probably many other methods of doing this, but the AC coupled system, the gist of it is that you have two inverters. There's the grid tied inverter and then the hybrid inverter. Yeah, when the power goes out, the hybrid inverter produces a sine wave which tells your grid power inverter, your grid tied inverter, that the electricity is on. Otherwise, in your completely grid-tied system, when there's no sine wave, your inverter says, hey, there's no electricity. I have to cut off what these solar panels are producing.
Okay, so that it doesn't send it back. Got it.
Yeah,
so this produces it at a different sine wave, so it doesn't go back to your system, and it just provides electricity to your house.
Yes.
So it's two inverters to have two different sine waves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the advantages of this are that you avoid the charge controller, and your inverter can also be sized just to handle your solar panels instead of having to handle the whole power of your house.
Yeah. So we talked about Nissan selling batteries to homeowners, but Tesla also sells the Powerwall, and that's a pretty popular option.
Yeah,
have you read
it's
what
a big
that
battery.
does? Yeah, it's just a big battery, a big expensive battery, but it's smarter in the way that it sees when electricity is more expensive, and that's when it sells it back. And when electricity is cheaper, then it pulls it from the grid if needed. So it monitors the cost of electricity during the day. So it's like
a mini griddy.
It's a mini griddy. Yep. So each Powerwall stores about 10 kilowatts of electricity, and the Powerwall can work both with and without solar panels.
Yeah, so this is where we get to the free nights and weekends thing.
Okay.
So I had this thought of, what if you, like a lot of electric retail providers have this free nights and weekend option. So what if you at night you pulled from the electric company and you charged your batteries, and then during the day when it actually cost for you to use electricity, you used your batteries.
Yep. So if you had a Powerwall, that's what it would do. It would see that electricity is free at that particular time, pull all the electricity it can, store it up, and then
use it during
the day.
Yes. So that's the way to flip the script, right?
Uh-huh. So if you think about that, I mean, maybe a off-grid system is not the best option. Having something with a Powerwall and a free nights and off and weekends thing might.
Now, when you say better. Best, you mean best for your
just financially,
your wallet.
Yes, yeah. I know we're thinking about.
That's not the most green solution.
Yes.
I guess unless you're under a plan that is 100% renewable.
Yeah.
Then just buy a bunch of Tesla batteries, which are very expensive, and charge your batteries at night and use that energy during the day.
Could you do that without a Powerwall? Have your own battery charging system?
Yeah, I don't see why not. You would just need a charge controller to tell it to
when it
charge.
To charge.
Yeah, you say, hey, 8 o'clock at night, it's free. start charging my batteries, and then in the morning, stop charging and switch over.
So the big incentive, the big push towards the solar panel and why people were choosing it was because of the tax credit.
And the need to be more environmentally friendly. A lot of people look at solar and say, hey, I'm doing good. I'm reducing my carbon footprint. But there was also a massive solar tax credit.
A 30% tax credit.
Which is a pure knockoff of the cost of your solar panels is knocked off your taxes at the end of the year, basically.
But that's expiring. Not right away, but it's going to decrease to 26%, 22%, 10%, and then eliminated by 2030.
Assuming there's no...
new bill.
Yeah, new bill that actually re-incentivizes it.
And unfortunately, people are going to be less inclined to install solar panels when there isn't it.
Right.
So if we do build a house next year, we wouldn't be getting a 30% tax credit. We would probably get 26 or 22.
Which is still pretty good.
It's
you're just knocking off the price of your whole system by that much, which is pretty amazing. Would we want to do a solar system in our anti-contractor home? Because we talked about the maintenance required. There's a lot of extra electrical setup necessary.
Yeah.
A lot of things that could go wrong. The simplest method would just be tie into the grid and
buy clean energy from the grid.
I guess so. But that might not be the most cost-effective method over the course of time.
So if we weren't doing that, the other option is to just lease the solar panels, because that's a pretty popular thing right now too.
Yeah, it's very popular right now. And I think that's because of the tax credit going down.
Yeah.
These companies that lease these solar panels are wanting to get that tax credit. And so they're really pushing this.
And people, the homeowners themselves, say, okay, I don't want to invest that much in a solar panel if I'm not getting that much tax credit back. So let me just lease it.
Yeah. A lot of people have had these salesmen come by to their house or leave flyers or meet you at Home Depot or something and say, hey, today's your lucky day.
Yeah.
I can fix your electricity problems. And we've had that salesman come by who tried to sell us zero-cost solar panels. And that's this new trend of this PPA, power purchase agreement, where you're leasing the solar panels
rather than buying them.
And it sounds pretty great. The upfront cost is $0. So what happens is you have a solar company builds a power plant on your roof and sells the electricity back to you. And so the power being produced, they're receiving that power and they're selling it to you. But you don't own these solar panels. You're just allowing them to build on your roof.
Yeah.
And at a zero cost, which is pretty amazing. Like they quote you with how much your panels will produce over the lifetime, and
per year as well.
Yes. And how much it's going to cost. So you're locked into a monthly rate over the course of this agreement, which the agreement is typically 20 to 25 years. That's an incredibly long time. It's
and
like
if you plan on staying in your home for that long, maybe that's
it's
not bad.
it's like a mortgage.
So what's the downside? It just sounds too good to be true.
It does, yeah. I'm not saying that this is a scam. It has to work for you because it's a long-term agreement.
Yeah. So the downside of it is you're kind of locked into their plan. There's no way of getting out. And if you do have to sell your home for any reason, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
the next homeowner may not want to take on your agreement. They may not want to buy your home because of your lease agreement.
Yeah, I'd say there's a few things to consider whenever you get into this 20 to 25 year agreement. One is consider the escalator, the percent increase every year, and knowing that up front, which they disclose to you. They tell you exactly what it's going to be. You also have to consider how much these solar panels are going to degrade over the course of this 20 to 25 years. So their promise of this much electricity in the first year is not going to be near the same on year 25.
And they're not going to replace the solar panels, are they? Unless it's damaged.
They're not going to replace with new, no. But they will maintain your solar panels. And there's lots of promises of if your roof gets damaged because of our solar panels, we will fix it. There's been mixed reviews on that. you have to consider the size of your array. They design your system for you, and they say, hey, it's going to produce this much power, which in our case would be great for the winter months whenever we have a gas furnace, so we're not using electricity to heat our house. But in the summer months, when we have our pool pump running and everything, the
Probably
solar panels would
wouldn't
not
produce
be
enough.
producing enough
Yeah.
to power our house. Thus, you have to get the extra electricity from somewhere.
To pull that extra in.
And so
yeah.
that goes back to your electricity bill that you get from your retail electricity provider has lots of fees. It's never that promised kilowatt per hour rate that they tell you it is. So
Yeah.
those extra fees will add up to your bill, and you'll have two bills, and your electricity could end up being more expensive than it was before you had your PPA.
Yeah. So a general rule I've seen is it's better to buy than lease with your solar panels.
I think if you're going to commit to it,
Yeah. Just buy it outright.
commit to the upfront cost, and then it's yours.
Yeah.
You can maintain it.
And the other thing we have to be cautious about is buying from third-party sellers, which we probably wouldn't. But there are lots of people out there who claim to be affiliated with the big companies, but they aren't. They're just installers, or they outsource their installing. There are lots of people, there are lots of third-party sellers. So
I
avoid
see.
them. Just go to the main source and get your entire kit from them.
Yeah. We actually went through this process and got to see the whole contract and everything and read the fine details. And in our specific case, in order to transfer the PPA to the next homeowner, if we were to sell our house, they would have to meet these certain criteria, including a certain credit score. You may lose that buyer because of your solar panels.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily add value to your house.
Yeah.
So one other note I wanted to mention about PPAs is posing the question about whether or not PPAs are the next adjustable rate mortgage.
Subprime mortgage?
Yeah.
So-
And will people not be able to afford their PPAs in the future as they realize that their electricity bill is actually more expensive when they're pulling from the grid,
Yeah.
and their solar panels are not producing near as much? And will people just walk away from these? And then what happens to the solar companies? So our recommendation is to buy
Over
leasing.
lease. So we've talked a lot about different systems, different options. So how do we bring all this knowledge that we've gained
Yeah, how does
into the anti-contractor home we want to build?
Right. I think there's lots of people out there that do solar installations by themselves.
Yeah.
And I would love to tackle that challenge. I would love the idea of being disconnected from the grid.
I don't think we're going to be getting a land out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
It's going to be somewhere pretty close to the city.
There's some pretty cheap land on eBay, though, way out in Marfa.
Yeah, we're not moving to Marfa. If it is close to the city, yes, we're probably going to be still grid tied. We are not going to be leasing these solar panels. If we're doing this, we're going to be buying them. So if it's a grid tied system, we can either look into the hybrid version where it can still produce electricity during a power outage
With a battery backup, you're
with
saying?
a battery backup.
It's going to be more expensive up front, or we could start with a grid tied system where we purchase the solar panels and we sell our electricity back to the electric company, and then down the road
Yes.
retrofit it with an AC coupled system.
Yes. The other thing we have to think about is our load. Yes, in the next home, we're not going to have a swimming pool to deal with and the pumps for sure. We would like to have an electric car, and that's going to increase our load a lot.
Right now we have a gas water heater, we have a gas furnace. If we
Yes.
move everything to electric, our load's going to be greater.
Our pool requires a lot of electricity, and you never know, like the car plus the heater plus the furnace, all that might be equivalent to just running the pool for 8 hours a day in summer. We don't know. We'll have to do the
Right.
calculations and figure that out.
We would like to future-proof our anti-contractor home so that if our electric load does go up significantly, we're still within the load that we've designed for.
You can always upsize your panel too. It's connected in series, so just you could add more panels if needed. And there are things that we didn't talk about that you should consider is the design of your home with the solar panels, the direction it's facing and all that. That's very, very important.
Yes.
You
But
can't
that
slap it
leads
on.
me to something that I've seen where a lot of people don't recommend putting your solar panels on your roof
Really?
Yes, because if you put it on your roof, you're increasing the risk of your roof leaking. And you have to consider things like the air gap between your roof and your solar panels in order to allow the solar panels to breathe, to stay cool. And maintaining them, spraying them off, cleaning them would be more difficult to get onto your roof. So a lot of people will recommend that you put your solar array somewhere else, build its own structure for it. So maybe that's why you see a lot of them that are built away from their home.
But if you're in the city, in the suburbs,
if your plot of land is not very big,
you have no choice.
Yeah.
You'd also want your roof to be designed in such a way the roof is more accessible. Right now, the way homes are designed, it's something you don't think about. It's up there. But solar panels need maintenance, need to be cleaned, need all that stuff. So,
I mean, our consideration is a low sloped roof or a flat roof of some sort, in which case you may need to build a structure on top of that to put your solar panels.
Yeah.
But that leads me to the structure for your house, what exactly that will be. We've covered the foundation of the home. We've covered the utilities coming into your home, which include the plumbing and the electrical. And we've considered a couple of options for your electrical, including solar. So now let's get to the house the home
itself,
and how it's going to hold itself up. What are the different structural techniques? Typical homes are in our area are stick built.
Yep.
Meaning wood frame, 2x4s, simple as that.
Are we talking about any of it in a DIY perspective?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Anti-contractor home, using as little contractors as possible. What's the lowest maintenance solution for the structure of your home?
All that stuff. Yeah.
So we'll discuss that in our next podcast. But thanks for listening to us ramble on about solar panels.
I'm Belinda.
And I'm Chance.
And until next time.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.